Hi everyone, this is my dog Jetta, and one of the best parts of lockdown is spending more time with our pets. But they don't belong in the kitchen, and if we're going to be cooking, we need to make sure that we have good hygiene. So that includes washing our hands, making sure we have a clean apron on, tying our hair up, and removing any jewellery. We also need to get all our equipment and ingredients out as well. So I'll start doing that to get organised. Okay, so here we are, all ready to go. I also have some clean tea towels and a clean dishcloth. And I have all my ingredients out and some equipment ready to go as well. The next step is to measure out my ingredients and preheat my oven to 180 degrees Celsius. Organisation is the key with cooking, making sure you have all your ingredients ready, all your equipment ready, especially with chocolate soufflés, because if you are not organised, then you can lose aeration and it won't rise as well at the end. Okay, so you can pause the video, measure everything out and start getting ready. For this recipe, you need 3 lots of butter. As you can see on here, there's a little measuring guide. So if you don't have scales, you can always just cut and have a little estimate about how much you need. Because we need 3 lots of butter, we need some to grease the ramekins, we need some for the actual souffle, and we need some for the chocolate sauce. So I'm going to measure it all out at once to save a little bit of time later. After that, hopefully will be enough. 31, that's pretty good. Okay, so I'll put that aside, that's for the actual souffle. And then I'll need 20 grams for the sauce. So I'm just going to put that on there. And that's on 21, so I'm going to put that aside. The sauce a bit later. And I need a little bit to melt, to brush the inside of the ramekin. And I can do that in the microwave. So I'm just going to melt that 20 seconds in the microwave, put a bit of Glad wrap over so it doesn't make a mess of your microwave. For this recipe, you need 4 ramekins, about 200 mils each. Okay, I've got 3 that are the same and 1 odd one. I don't know where my 4th one was. It doesn't really matter. If you have smaller ones, then you might end up making 6. So it just depends on how big your ramekins are. Just brush a little bit of butter into the bottom of each one. And then when you're doing them, make sure you go around the sides and just brush in an upward motion around the edge. That's going to encourage the soufflés to rise up high later. To measure out 1.5 tablespoons of caster sugar, just get 1 tablespoon and place it into another cup or container. Then it's 1 tablespoon and then 2 teaspoons to make 1.5 tablespoons. Then with your sugar, sprinkle it into each ramekin and tilt it and coat the edge of the ramekin with the sugar. And do that for each one. I'm going to place my ramekins on a baking tray with some baking paper and just put them on there so that when I fill the ramekin dishes with the souffle mixture, it can go straight into the oven. Okay, so I've measured out my souffle ingredients. So you need 30 grams of butter, 2 tablespoons of plain flour, 160 mils of milk. Remember, always measure liquid ingredients in a liquid measuring jug. You need 125 grams of good quality dark chocolate. I'm using 70% of the Cadbury's baking cooking chocolate. Now, if you don't have scales, I think it's about 6 rows. So if you count them down, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or maybe it's only 5. Let's check it out. Pop it in. Yeah, 130 is 5 rows. So break off 5 rows. This other part can be used for the chocolate sauce that you're going to make later, so that can just be set aside. This needs to be broken up and chopped up into smaller pieces. If you have a non-slip mat or a wet dishcloth, you can pop that under the board and that makes it a little bit safer. And then you can just break it up and then chop it into small pieces with a knife. Use a fairly large knife and just be very careful. Cutting each piece roughly in half if you can. If you find it too hard to do it all at once, just do a couple at a time. For this next part, you'll need to move to your stove top. You'll need a medium to small saucepan and you'll need a wooden spoon. and we're going to start off by melting the butter. Once your butter is completely melted, you need to put the flour in, your 2 tablespoons of flour, and that needs to cook off for 1 minute. Stir it constantly, and this is the beginning of what's known as a roux. Okay, a roux is the basis for a few recipes, including a white sauce for a lasagna or a cauliflower white sauce. Make sure you're watching your clock or set a timer for 1 minute so that you cook it for the right amount of time. After it's started to bubble and it's cooked for 1 minute, you need to remove it from the heat. Don't put it straight onto your bench. And you need to add the milk gradually, so a little bit at a time. Maybe do it in 3 batches. And then you can put it back on the heat. This process is called gelatinization, and as you can see, it's starting to thicken, and you need to stir it the whole time over the heat and bring it to the boil. Once it comes to the boil, you need to boil it for 1 minute, and that means that gelatinization will be complete, and that means all the starch granules in the flour will swell and burst and absorb all of the liquid, so it will get to the full thickness consistency that's required. Mine has just come to the boil, so I am now setting my timer to boil that for 1 minute. After 1 minute, I will add the chocolate, and the chocolate will melt in there. Hey Google, stop. Okay, so that was my 1 minute. I'm now going to add the chocolate and my 2 tablespoons of caster sugar and stir that through. And I'm going to just take it off the heat. And the chocolate should melt. Okay, once that has completely stirred through, you can transfer this to a bowl. And I'm going to separate my eggs and put the egg yolks into my chocolate mixture. When separating the eggs, make sure you have 3 bowls. Okay, so I've got this bowl here. My eggs are room temperature. They'll beat up better in room temperature. I'm going to use this bowl for the white. Just tip it back and forth. If you find this method difficult, then I can show you another method in a moment. Place that in there. The other method you can use separating the egg white is to crack open the shell. This time I'm doing it in a separate bowl to the first one, just in case I break the yolk. And then you can just put it into your hands. Make sure your hands are clean first. And just let the white come off it, and then place it in there. If you have any red dots in the egg, you can just get the shell and scoop that out using the shell. Like that. Okay, then do that for the 3rd egg as well. Chip that in. And wash your hands before you touch anything. Tip the 3rd egg white in with the others and just set that aside. We're going to beat them up in a moment. And then your 3 egg yolks can go into the souffle chocolate mixture and mix that through. That's also given the chocolate a little bit of time to cool down. The egg yolk will cook if you add it while it's still too hot. For whisking the egg whites, you either can use an electric hand beater or you might have a bench electric mix master that you can use. It doesn't matter if you use the whisk attachment or just normal beater attachment. If you don't have any of those, you can just use a hand whisk, okay, and just do it that way. It will take a little bit longer, but you will still definitely get the same effect. Okay, so as you'll see, you'll notice that the egg white is clear and translucent at the moment, and once we start beating, it will turn white, and that is known as denaturation. So the proteins in the egg white will get denatured, and that changes the chemical structure of the protein. So I'll get started. You want them to become stiff peaks, which means when I lift out the whisk, that the egg white will form a nice little wave shape. When it's looking close, you can lift it out and have a look. As you can see, when I lift it out, it folds up and over onto itself, so it's still quite not ready. It needs just probably another 20 or 30 seconds. You'll notice that the beaters will start leaving a pattern. This is perfect now. Now be careful not to overbeat your eggs because then it'll start to collapse. As soon as you have finished, you can transfer a third of the egg white first into your chocolate mixture. So just one scoop, and we're going to fold. So using a large metal spoon, and you just fold it back onto itself. Now folding helps keep the egg aerated, because that's also the key to a good souffle, is nice and airy. So you don't want to stir or mix it, you want to fold it. Having a plastic spatula handy is really good too. You can scrape it down and then mix it a little bit more. If you don't have a metal spoon, this would also do as a good stirring utensil. Once you've folded in that first little bit of egg white, you can add the rest. Make sure you scrape out as much as you can from the bowl and then stir it through until it is all really nicely combined. Stop halfway through, scrape it down again, and do a final mix through. Till it looks like that. Be careful that you don't over mix the souffle mixture. Then using your large metal spoon and then a smaller spoon, divide it into your 4 ramekins or 6 ramekins if you have smaller ones, and use all your mixture. As always, use a plastic spatula to scrape out the last bits of the souffle from the bowl. Okay, remember, rinse and stack in the sink, or rinse your dishes before you wash them, or it's up to you. You can use the dishwasher if you like when you're at home. So when you're done, you'll see that there's a few little splashes. So you can just run your fingers around and get rid of those. If there's any on the outside, you can use a clean dishcloth to wipe that so that you get that all off. Okay, then into the oven. It says 15 to 20 minutes. I would check after 15 minutes, and if they're ready, then take them out. They may need a little bit longer, but definitely 15 minutes for a start. Set your timer, and while they're cooking, start cleaning up. Okay, so how's it going? I've just had to do my dishes because I needed the saucepan for the chocolate sauce and I needed the measuring jug for the cream. So I've had to just do a couple of dishes to get organised. So to make the sauce, you need 30 grams of butter. Remember, we measured that out earlier. You need 100 mils of cream. Make sure you use a liquid measuring jug and pour that in. You need 2 teaspoons of brown sugar. You can pack that in tight. And you need 1 teaspoon of vanilla. That can go in with the cream. Whoops. And it can all go into the saucepan all together at once. Use a scraper to scrape the cream out. And your, of course, chocolate the leftover block that we used earlier. Break that up. And also good to chop that up as well. And then it'll melt a little bit easier. So just like you did before, have it all sitting flat on your chopping board. And just chop each piece into half or quarters. So it's all in there together, and I'm just going to stir that until the chocolate melts and it's a nice chocolatey sauce. As soon as the chocolate's all melted and it's nice and smooth, you can just take it off the heat and set it aside. You don't need to bring it to the boil. It just needs to be melted and nice and glossy, and then it's ready to serve onto your soufflés. So they've just come out of the oven and they look pretty good. Not as much aeration as I would have liked, but they're not bad. And I have everything ready to go to serve. Now, you can either eat it straight out of the dish like that. You can poke a hole in it and pour some chocolate sauce in and eat it like that. To tip this out, it's a bit slippery, so be careful. To tip it out into the bowl. Beautiful. And then you can serve it with a little bit of ice cream and with your chocolate sauce. And I reckon if you serve this up to your parents, you'll get off doing the dishes for a month. Absolutely delicious. And as another little finale, if you wanted to, a little sprinkling of ice and sugar on top for presentation. A few strawberries or mixed berries on there as well would also be amazing. Hope you enjoy making this recipe. I know you're going to love eating it. Make sure you clean up as you go. Make sure you wash your hands regularly while you're cooking as well. Remember, good hygiene is really important when you're cooking, especially for other people. Happy cooking, everyone. Have a great day.